For those of you who are still becoming familiar with this palette, it's based on the printer's palette, but we've got cobalt blue, permanent rose, and cadmium yellow pale hue as our primaries. We've got an ivory black for making shadows. We've got white, you can't do without white at all. And we've got burnt umber for doing drawing and doing a wash on the canvas and things like that. So, and that's what we'll start off with, is a wash of burnt umber. We've also got terps, or you can use zested, or you can use sansador. You could even use white spirit. White spirit kind of tends to make paintings dry looking, but then you can always varnish them afterwards. So it's not the end of the world if you've only got white spirit. And this here is linseed oil, okay? And that'll help the paint move if we need it to. So this is a stretched canvas, by the way. Give that a tamp down. And now we've kind of reduced this white canvas to the kind of the tone of here. It's kind of like a wood, a light wood color. That's a piece of MDF. And so that kind of looks like that. So it's going to be easier to judge our colors across from our palette to our canvas. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of do the drawing. Well, I'm not going to sort of do it, I am going to do it. So let us measure first of all. Okay, so we need to fit the entire thing from the bottom of this blossom here, this rose, to the top one there. Okay, so I'm going to do it from your point of view. So there's the tip of the brush, the end of the brush at the top there, aligned with the first rose. And I'm going to move my index finger up from the bottom and down again there. There, that's the length of our composition. Now I'm going to compare that to the width. And the width really is from that leaf to there, really. And what's that in comparison? Like 2/3, isn't it? It's 2/3 as wide as it's high. And we're governed by the height of this, this canvas because it's slightly wider. It's not like an A4 sheet of paper. An A4 sheet of paper would come into here. So it's slightly wider than that, but we're governed by the height. Okay, so we're going to say, well, I don't want the top to come beyond there, and I don't want the bottom of this to come beyond there. Okay, and what's 2/3 of that? Something like that, isn't it? 2/3 there, and that will be our width, and that takes us to about there. Okay, so we can actually just give ourselves a little guide, a box in which to cite the entire composition. All those objects should fit mostly within that. Now, the likelihood is we'll exceed it. I seem to always exceed it, but we'll be fine because we've got plenty of space. We've got a bit of air around there, and it's all kind of wishy-washy around here anyway. They're not sort of going to occupy the entire, you know, that blossom is only just there. So if we come up a bit high, it's not too bad. We don't want to come up any higher than that. All right, so let's find the center. Okay. We're going to give ourselves a center line because that'll help us. That'll help us get the thing sighted properly, because we don't know yet whether it's going to sit in this, that jar's going to sit in the center. It looks like it will, but we want to make sure, get our drawing right before we start painting. And I'm not talking about a highly accurate drawing or a detailed drawing, but the accuracy is in the citing the composition and just making sure that you have most of the salient points in. Okay, so we've got a center line. Let's have a look. How is the center here from your point of view? So that's the center of the jar. Let's use the center. Actually, that leaf is a good one to use because it seems to be at the same plane as that one, just a little short of it, but that's okay. Oh, well, happy days then. It's as symmetrical as you could possibly get with a bunch of flowers. All right, so we know that the whole thing, the jar is centered left to right. Now, top to bottom, what are we going to do? Where's the center? So the jar looks like the tip of that kind of, that's a bit of raffia there. It comes out here. And we can see if that is central. It's not, but it might be including that rose, actually. I forgot about that rose there. That one there, and then to the raffia. That's more like it. And that might do us. It just exceeds it slightly at the top. So from the bottom of the rose, to there, the raffia seems to be halfway, with just a little bit of that poking out over the top. So let's start into our drawing. How much, let's have another thing, is how much of the width does the jar occupy? Is it a third? Ooh, that's pretty good. And if that's a third, then that probably is. It's just, we're lucky people. But the jar does occupy a third. There, 1, 2, 3 parts. We know that the center is the raffia. We know that the rose actually comes down to here, not the end of the jar. So if we got a jar like that, that means that rose comes up to there, like that. But it doesn't, the rose comes, I want the rose to come in a little bit further. I think it looks nicer. So there, there. Okay, so, and then a line. That's the rose there. But the raffia here, and what shape is that? We know that this doesn't really exceed this line here. So we can do something like that. That's over the raffia. That comes down past the raffia here. And then back out to 1 rose, 2 roses, that one exceeding it. We can always change this later. We can always sort of give it a bit of a, correction afterwards. That we know that comes out like that. That rose is in. That rose is in to that one there. And then there's chrysanthemums. I couldn't find roses of all colors when I was there. And that comes in, that comes beyond the center line, but not quite to the edge of the jar if we continue that way all the way up. There, and then there's another chrysanthemum there. Okay, and we've got the meniscus of the water. More than halfway up. When you're doing drawings, you do them in straight lines. It's easier to actually sort of make straight lines than it is to do curves. Okay, so we want the horizon. I think Manet's one was sitting on a lovely piece of kind of warm orangey kind of marble, but obviously you can't win them all, can you? And Kimmage in the 2020s. So now let's have a look. That comes down into there like that. About level with raffia. You're using points to sort of to guide you. It's called like reference points on a map. Okay. That's a dark, comes down there like that. Dark was there. Shadow there. She gets a bit shadowy there. Shadowy there. Oh, the foliage of that rose there comes across the top like that. Dark there. Dark there. Okay. All right. I'm going to do a kind of a little thing called notan. It'll just help me sort of get into the tonal values of this painting. You know, the darkest part to the lightest part, wherever that is. So I'm going to do that notan. Goes all the way down through there. We know that the raffia comes through there. Okay, that's through there. Leaves in there. Okay, let's have a look at the we can also sort of get this shape by putting in darks around it, so that we just get an idea of where we're supposed to be on this. Because it's an amorphous shape. It's kind of it's hard to take it all in at one bit. There's that raffia sort of part there. Raffia there. So this is kind of like, it's not quite an underpainting. It's like a really, really rough underpainting, but it gives you a kind of a steer on the tonal values that you're trying to sort of get. So that's actually further down. That's further down. This is quite a dilute mix of burnt umber. Okay. That's okay, so that's you can check that could be further down, that chrysanthemum. Even further down, actually. Get more rag. And this is quite an important thing, because you want to be sort of you want to be sure of the structure of the painting before you start going ahead and painting properly. Okay, so leaf out there. That's a dark coming into there. So that's a leaf. That's a leaf. Dark coming down to the jar there. More leaves there. There's a nice chrysanthemum there. Make it smaller than I had it before. I think I'll start out with those chrysanthemums. I'll start out with the chrysanthemums, then the orange roses, then the pink roses. So that's the pink rose there. Okay, let's try that. The rose is casting a shadow down here. Okay. All right. Oh, red got into that. So we're going to mix up a color for the yellow roses. So it's quite a pale yellow. it's more like a tulip, a daffodil kind of yellow than, you know, a really warm yellow, cadmium yellow, pale hue, I beg your pardon. Bit of oil. Even put in a little bit of white, because it is a pale kind of yellow rather than a sunny yellow. All right, so that would be our average, for example. Let me have a look, put a bit more in there. Forever making too little paint. And that's a cardinal error. All right, so we got some pale yellow there. And then there are parts of the flower in shadow. And that's kind of got a little bit of black in there. Into the same mix. Something like that, I think. And we'll just use that as a kind of a jumping off point. I can see the shadow parts in there. And the shadow parts in there. And then there's one which is very shadowy along here. It's almost leaf green, but it's actually a chrysanthemum flower head. Okay, so we're not sort of following petal lines yet. Okay, I'm going to move on to the orange. Even as an orange, it's quite pale for those rose flower heads. So I'm going to use a bit of yellow and permanent rose, a bit of oil just to help it move to begin with. A bit more. Okay. Do you know what? That's not too bad as it is. I'm going to use that now. I need to make a shadow version of this. So I'm going to use a little bit of black, mix it into what I've already made, and just check it. I think there's a bit more red in it, in that shadow. You can't really see very much of the shadow, and a little bit of blue. Okay, and then we'll paint that in. Okay, so that is kind of around about here. This is the shadow parts I'm putting in first. There. Okay. Okay, and then we'll put in the lit part paint that we made up. Can't see very much of it. Okay, I'm gonna have to move on because I need to get those pink flower heads in because we need to position them in order to get the rest of the painting going. Parts of them are warm pink, parts are cool pink. So we'll start out with a basic mix, something like that. Bit of oil in there just to help it along. Okay, we'll use that as our basic mix. White, permanent rose. And then we'll make a shadow part. Actually, we'll make a warm part first because, sorry, a warm pink as well, because we'll need that. Okay. And then from this, we make our shadow part, a little bit of black. That's actually not too bad as it is, and maybe a little bit more red. As you can see, look, so for me, look, there's the kind of normal pink is kind of here, the dark pink here with the black applied just as a shadow maker is here. And then there's a warm pink here. It's the same over on this one, and on the top of that one, and on the top of that one. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to apply the shadows first because we're oil painters and we do the shadows first. We work from dark to light. So here is one. So we're still not making petal shapes. here. Here. Okay. Let's get in the nice pink there. Not painting petal shapes, we're just sort of doing dabs where we see that color. There's the warm, oops, I picked something else up in that, and I shouldn't have done. There. Down the side of that. Okay, there. And I can just see a little bit of orange poking through there. All right, so we've got our chrysanthemums, we've got our flower heads. Oh, we haven't got them all. Hang on, need to put some more in. There, and there's another one here, which is very warm. It's catching that warm light. Picked up some white with that. Get rid of that. Put that in between. Okay, let's get some foliage in. I'm going to start out with the darks that are kind of all around here. All right. And make that quite dark. I'm going to make it dark green. So this is for the foliage, the dark parts of the foliage. Blue and yellow. Make it green, bit of red. More yellow. A touch of black in there. Bit of oil to help it move around. And I'm going to put that in first before I start doing all the rest of the foliage. So it really is kind of dark in there. Okay. And it comes down dark in there too. Okay. Dark across here. I'll just leave myself a little bit of space to put in some lighter green there. Okay, that's the darker green. I'm just going to make up the actual sort of the rest of the paint for the leaves. A lot more yellow. Just need quite a lot of that. Blue, yellow to make the green, and the red to make it more natural looking. Mix it in with that dark a little bit because it is quite a dark. There, I'm going to make a shadowy version of that because it isn't all completely dark, but it's dark enough in places. So make a shadow version of that. Out of that, you make that mix. You add a little black. You can make a shadow there. Make that a little bit darker actually. Okay, so where do I see that? I can see that coming into there. Place it around there, coming into the jar, coming down there. In there. Around here. So we're starting to shape the flower heads. That kind of way. And then around here, it's not quite as dark as the other one. Move that into there. Pushing the paint around. There. There's a nice leaf, which is dark here. That's a bit brighter. We can average that out here. That's not too bad. And there's a light one coming down here. There's a lot going on. Okay, that comes out a wee bit. Okay, put that there. Okay, what else have we got? Now, we're moving to a kind of the lighter green that I made up. And that doesn't go everywhere, but it'll give us a good sort of idea where we can put it subsequently. If you're not too far away from the color, it makes it easier to change later on. If you have to make too many really radical changes, that's when things tend to go wrong and your painting turns to mud. I've shortened this. I've shortened it to fit it in, but that's fine. Van Gogh would have been putting in sort of extra flower heads all around the place, you know, post facto flower heads, just to make the painting look better. There's some pale greens. Okay, so I'm going to put them in as well. I'm just going to add a little bit of white to the mix that I did make, and add them because I just need them to be there, so that I can get on with the rest of the painting. Here, that one down there, there is something that I neglected to do, which I should sort of mention now, is to find out where the lightest light is and the darkest dark is in that painting. It is an important thing, and but my highlights are kind of on the jar here, the bright highlights, and they're reflecting some of the windows behind me. I think they are the brightest, so everything else got to be a little bit lower than that tonally. A couple of brights up there maybe. Yeah. Nobody told me about that rose down at the bottom. I should have done that as well. Let's get that in somehow. There. Put that in there. Okay, and then there's some, all the same greens that we had before. And they're leaves, like we don't want to sort of have a painting of leaves. So there's no, you shouldn't really sort of concentrate on them. It's like the book that I read about portrait painting, where the teacher said, you know, don't spend too much time on the ear. You don't want painting a portrait of somebody's ear. To concentrate on the better parts of the person. Well, that was an interesting observation. That was Helen Van Wyck, who was a good teacher. Okay, let us do, let's do that foreground, okay? Because the foreground comes up into the jar. Okay, so I'm going to make up. It is a kind of a vaguely wood-colored hue. It's like the palette, so I'm going to get some white. Get some yellow, because it's broadly a kind of a yellow, a grayish yellow. Got some red, put some red into there, and I put some blue into there. A bit more red, a bit more yellow. So it's something along those lines, a bit yellower. All right. Put a bit of oil into it so I can get it to move around a little bit. And then we're going to make a shadow part because it's shadowy off to the right. So it's a little bit of black into that mix. Or, you know, you pull a bit of it aside and make your shadow mix from that. And maybe just a little bit of blue into it as well. Not picking up anything there. Okay, and let's move back. You see it's all sort of, it's that color, and there's the shadow of that color. We'll put that in first. So the shadow comes down there. The shadow, the rose is casting a shadow, isn't it? There. Almost that entire half of the painting, bit of it in there. Something like that. So now we've got a shadow in there, and then we put the lit part in. We've got to have something to work with. We're going to start using the background in this glass. See, we're painting through it. We're not painting it separately. Okay. It kind of comes up, as you would expect in the glass there. You can even see it in here. Okay, let's keep going around here. I've got the shadows of my leaves. Naughty, naughty. Smacky wrists. Not the end of the world. Okay. So we've now got foreground there. Let's put in those shadows, for God's sake. The notable thing about Manet is probably what got him into so much difficulty with the Academy was how sort of indistinct he could be. Because everyone else was like Courbet, you know, that artist Courbet, everything was spectacularly detailed. And Monet was just sort of vague, I suppose. We can deal with that later. I'm going to beef up that background now a little bit because we can start shaping our, you know, this whole mass of color here. So we just need to, I need a steer on where this is going. Yes. Yeah. But that's okay. That's not so much background there. That's that raffia. Do you know what? I actually will put that in first. That raffia thing is like almost exactly the same as the foreground color, which is that sort of straw color. I'm just going to put that in. So, and then there's a dark version where it sort of wraps around the neck of the jar. Here. It comes down here too. All right, so now it's in. Let's go to the background. The background, right at this moment, I'm going to put in as kind of just a burnt umber. The background here, because this will help you when you're sort of making your own setups, the actual background, the drape behind those flowers is my t-shirt. It's just a black t-shirt. So I used to have a whole sort of load, big roll of black velvet, massive roll of black velvet, and I can't seem to find it, which is weird. So I'm just making pure burnt umber, and I'm just going to sort of start shaping this around. So not black. I think this is the point. You don't want it to be black, because if you use black, it would be terribly, terribly harsh. And burnt umber is nice and dark, but it's also nice and warm. And as we all know, warmth is good in a painting. Let's see now. See, there's that dark that comes in there like that. And you can see that we're just starting to shape things with our opposing tone. See, there's a leaf cone up there. We can always sort of put that in later. Okay. Where else? There's the dark in there, isn't there? Very dark. Now, just let me finish that up around there. Okay, so now we've got a bit of a background there. See that I've missed some of the leaf work, so I'm going to do some leaf stuff here. Actually, do you know what? I should have done that there. Well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to move into here. There's something that's reflecting. That's reflecting the background. It's reflecting the t-shirt. So I'm just going to put in what I actually use for the background here. There. And then here, there's a reflection of the leaves again, but it's a pale reflection of the leaves. I'm going to get some of that black green that I made and put that in there. Okay, where else do we see that? I see that also, that same thing here. Move that down there like that. So you're not painting sides of glass. That's a real important point. You're just painting what you see. You can't really see the glass. All you can see is what's through it. I keep hearing notifications on my phone, and I better check them just in case it's you telling me that I'm doing something wrong. So I'm making green, aren't I? So yellow and blue, bit of red. Okay, let's have a look at that. Around in here, it's really just a mass of tones in here. Over here, could be more in it. In fact, it's really just the lighter greens that I'm missing. That one can come down there like that. The lighter green. So I'm just gonna, or the paler, I should say. They're pale, kind of bluish greens, for example. That one there. That one there. Up. There's a very pale yellow or green up here. Come to the, what do you call it, the chrysanthemum there. That has a stalk there. We put those in just because they're more reference points. So show me where I am on this painting. There. As I say, the leaves aren't the most important thing, so just okay, and some more deep but bright greens. In here. Okay. Dark green down there. Refraction of the green there. Pale green here. Got the pale green there, that's okay. Okay, I'm going to darken that little sort of reflection of the t-shirt just here. Needs to be darker, I think. That there. Shaping that part in there. Pushing the paint around to get that sort of, I don't know what it was, little decorative shape there. Some very bright reflections on some leaves. Here, a bit of red got into that. Never worry. Okay. That's warmer. Up there. Mixing a bit of green here, and that can shape that chrysanthemum too. Get that dark and shape the chrysanthemum here. Into there. Needed a bit of a light touch, I suppose, at this point. You're starting to sort of cut into bits of paint there. You can still paint into it if you're painting into it with a kind of a version of the paint that it is anyway. So if it's a green and you paint green into it, it'll be okay. If you start trying to paint a pure red into it, it won't work. It'll just turn to mud. You often hear about painters talking about their paintings have gone to mud. And it's usually because of that, I think. There's some bluish leaves here. Actually, they're a bit bluish here as well. That side. That really is very dark there. I'm gonna shape this flower head here. It comes around there like that. And you're just gradually sort of bringing everything together. I mean, I have no idea how long Manet would have taken to paint his still life. So I would imagine he was a quick. He seems like he would have been a very fast painter. He didn't dwell on things too much, at least not in his paintings. That's darker than I have it there. Pulling the thing together. I can darken this. This is just more pure burnt umber here. Push that up into there. Push that inside. Missed a little bit there of the bluish silver leaf, and that means I can see. See, I think I got that a bit awry there. Could have brought that in a bit more, and you can do that. It's not too. It won't affect the painting too much. Bring that down there. Some darks in there. Let's see them there. Now, there's some lighter, paler greens. Down here, so we'll put that in there like that. And that, let me just put in some activity in here. There are all the stalks. That's darker. That's dark there. There's a reflection of the foreground there. There's tiny little foreground lights which are kind of worth putting in. There, just to tip those on with a brush. There's the meniscus, which is kind of important. So the let's put that in. That's very dark. Okay, the meniscus of the water. Need to see a little bit of that. Need to push that in there as well. But that dark, it comes down. Lots and lots of reflections is the kind of impression you're trying to give. And then there's a lit part of the meniscus which looks a bit like the foreground again. only slightly redder, which sits on top of that line that I just drew before. There. Okay, so back up to the raffia. That's darker and yellower, actually. Over here. Well, we don't need to make too much of that. It's not an important feature, but it does come out there. Let's cut this in a little bit better. Okay. Now, as you see, this is glass. You can't really see the edge of it. The important thing is to take some of that here and just lose that edge. Don't need it there. But at the same time, we can get some of this background and just bring it down the side. Just makes it look more like glass. Back to the burnt umber. Cutting that there. We'll do something with those flower heads shortly. So I think the flower heads are almost the last thing that you would deal with, apart from the highlights. Okay, so we've got a okay, so we've got a nice dark background now. So I need to deal with this around here. There's some greens that I need to put in without being overly specific. In there. Well, that's bringing it together, thanks be to God. Some nice bright yellowy greens. Paint them into the actual burnt umber. Just make sure that the paint is proud of the brush, if you see what I mean. They're darker, bluer. Some sort of just indications of lots of foliage there. Don't get yourself completely bogged down in that kind of thing. that's really dark. I just want to restate it to help shape some of these flowers in there. That actually comes across there like that. Shape that thing again. I need to do a bit of change over here, just to bring that in a wee bit. Okay. Okay, we've got that. That comes in a bit further over there like that. Now, some of the flower. Oh God! Hang on. Give me a moment. I've got to bring that up a wee bit. It's been annoying me for the last half an hour. Probably you too. Leaf there. Cut it back. Okay, let's do something with the flower heads. That chrysanthemum first of all, and go back to my original mix of that pale yellow, and I'm going to plant in bits where I think that it needs it, especially up here. And so we're doing this into the paint that's already there. This is what they call wet into wet painting, or alla prima. So we're getting it all done in one go. Just a little bit of indication that there's changes and it's catching the light. Just little dabs. Okay, and then it gets slightly greener as it goes into the center. I'm not going to worry too much about that, but then we can push in from the outside too. Okay. And likewise here, bits that we missed there. We're trying not to get too Rembrandt, be more sort of brushy. Okay, now let's go on to the orange roses again. Okay, and then we can go into these parts that are just folding over into the light. We can see one coming underneath in there. We don't want to make too much of it because we'll only turn the thing into mud if we overdo that kind of thing. Now there's a real sort of shadow in there, but it's very intense. So I'm just going to use pure permanent rose and a little bit of that orange into it. So it's much more permanent rose than yellow. And that goes in there. Just make more of that. You can see in there a little bit. as a paler version of it. This is a good point at which to say that the palette that I'm using, like nearly every palette there is, no matter almost what you paint, is not up to the task which we're setting it. So, as Helen Van Wyck also said, in one of our good painting classes, you're only ever coping with the problems you have with paint, not solving them. Okay, and then there's that darker part there. I'm just going to move that in there. Bring it into there. Okay, let's go on and do something with the other roses. And put in notes to suggest petals. So, but I'm just adding a little bit of a darker notes to, how would you say, to define the shapes. There, that's better. There. And down in here, down there. Then there's a lighter. That's that dark one again, isn't it? Here. The bluer one there. That really is bright in some places. Down here. So all these notes are coming in at the end. You don't do them from the beginning. I often see students painting in the entire flower first, and it doesn't work. You do the general thing first, and then you start painting into that general part. Just dabs. And the thing is, like, is you feel as you're going through, oh, this is I'm getting nowhere with this. You know, there's nothing like what I'm doing. But eventually, so you put in a couple of strokes and say, oh, right, okay. It requires quite a bit of confidence, I think, and an experience. Up here, there's some more lights as well, but we're not being specific. The other thing is, I'm not sure what size Manet's paintings were. It'd be nice to know. Probably was written on the thing when I was checking them out, but I didn't have time to. A dark note in there, and a very red note on to the right of it. We start talking like musicians. Notes, grace notes. Ah, that's nice to go in there like that. Are there any more? I like to put those in. And that's dark as it comes down here. That's fine there. Some lighter pinks. Essentially, it's just a collection of dabs. And they don't even have to be in the direction that you expect them to be. Let's have a look. In here, I could do something. Yes, I could add. I could add a petal in here that needs a petal there. Vagueness is the order of the day. If you start being sort of getting too sort of into details, you start revealing the fact that your drawing isn't quite right, or something like that, you know. So you're better off just giving it an impression. Dabs, dabs, dabs. Get dabs. Dabs and darkness. Yeah, put that across there. Shape that a little bit. Oh, that improves things a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Come down there like that. Up. Gives it a little bit of structure. Now, let me do something with this leaf here, which is slightly bluish, really. And then there was a leaf coming into there, which I kind of neglected to put in. That comes in there. Shape that there. Bluish. Get rid of sort of little sort of areas that okay. Down here, we've got this little rose head. Let's push that in a wee bit now. Okay, here. That really very dark part. I'm going to put a little bit of black into that. And the other thing about sort of Manet, which sort of, I think sort of distinguishes him from the other impressionists, he was kind of a proto-impressionist, wasn't he? But it's that I'm pretty certain he used black, whereas I don't think the other impressionists did. They got rid of black off their palettes. But black is very useful. Just for making shadows. No other reason to have it on your palette. Breaking that up. It's not necessary. Let's make more of that foreground color, the variation on it, I suppose. A bit of oil into it just to help it move. Let me means we can sort of play around with that a little bit. Shape that shadow. Okay, there's a bit of a dark under here. A shadow under that leaf there, coming up into there. Bit of that background there, cutting into that rose to shape it a little bit. Okay, some notes in the leaves. Just leaf stuff. A bit more in here, just to push that up there, push that up there. Make less of that. Okay. Push that in there a little bit. Some very, very light notes in the leaves. Well, that's bluish. That's interesting. There. Bluish there. Coming into the jar. Dark up here. Some dark notes in that raffia decoration. Then there's a blue highlight coming down the front. It's kind of like a violet color. See that there and down there. It doesn't seem to come much beyond the meniscus there. And there's some brighter highlights, but none of them seem to be warm. So we won't make them warm. We'll paint what we see. Here. And there. And then the other sort of little sort of things that we see there. Is there anything that we need to sort of sort out? Yeah, there's a kind of a bit of thing going on here. Before the leaf goes slightly blue here. The leaves are twisting and turning, aren't they? And they're just reflecting different kinds of light as they do that. And so just here, it's reflecting a kind of a bluish light, and here the warm light, because there is actually a spotlight just up there. I'm going to cut that leaf back actually, because it's gone out too far. Okay, just need to be that wide. Okay. Shadow in here. Darkness here. Oh yes, there's a little bit more of that rose up there than I have. Just comes out there a little bit more there. Two notes in here. I hope when I actually turn this round, you won't be asleep. What was I doing? Oh yeah. Can't remember why I put the green bloody paint on there. Anything else? Don't want hard edges on those leaves. Don't particularly want to draw attention to them. Okay. And maybe there's something that I always like to do. Don't think Manet really sort of bothered with it. Oh yes, there is something there, isn't there? I didn't do that. There's some sort of reflection there. I always like a kind of a pool of light in my paintings. I've always done that. Even when I was at school, I can remember thinking, oh yeah, that looks effective. I'll do that. Right. So let us change the camera. I'll show it to you. So
that's beautiful. Beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what was that? That was kind of like an hour and a half. You know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast Manet painted, but
gorgeous.
I think it took a bit longer than that. But yeah, well, thank you very much. So I'll go up close so you can see the texture, because it's important just to see the strokes and everything. I think you'll agree, it's quite sort of brushy, isn't it? It's sort of just, yeah. So it's the overall effect that you're after, you know, not tiny little fecky brush strokes. So yes, I'm now going to put you on gallery view and see how you all are. So you just have to wake up and put your coffee down. There you are.